books, 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 ting, books, 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 ting, books, 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 ting, books, 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 ting. Shelve it!
Did it record? Did you hear that?
I can't.
The voice of the American robot. Welcome, Richard Dawson, to the Eggs 2023 Book Club.
Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. And today, well, I invited you to come and take part in this book club because we're going to talk about Michel Faber. Because this is a book that I've just read, The Book of Strange New Things. And I think I got chatting with you in lockdown about Michel Faber. I think it was maybe John Duran who put something on Twitter about reading The Crimson Petal and the White and it being like the best book he's ever read. And I was like, oh my God, it's so good. And we got chatting and then he was like, well, Richard Dawson told me about Michel Faber. And I was like, right, well, I'm going to have to talk to you about books then.
Yeah, it's been a while since I read that one. I didn't read any of them, in fact, but they're right at the top of the pile.
For me, with this one, what I thought was dead different is because I'd read The Crimson Petal and the White, and I guess for book club people who are watching this, it's an outstanding book, like, you know, unbelievably great, that novel. But it's set in Victorian England, you know, and it's very historic. It's almost like a historical novel, isn't it? You know, like a realistic historical novel.
Yeah.
And this is a total sci-fi number.
Yeah, kind of, but then it doesn't do any of the things that sci-fi usually does. There's no action, there's no, the planet is very boring. There's, it's just so dowdy, you know, this like brown planet, spongy brown, and the air is thick, everything moves slowly.
Yeah, all the food they eat is like white flour, which is just like they just
stodgy. It's so great.
I read one, I don't know whether it was on the back, but someone described it as unsettling. And I thought that was a really good description of the book, because when I was reading it, and I never usually go through the plot of books and stuff with people. Well, I haven't so far on the book club because I always think it spoils it a little bit. But I wanted to unpick quite a bit of this because it's just so bloody good. It's just like you're always expecting something to happen, but it never quite does. And, you know, he meets all these sort of aliens. I can't remember what they're called.
Oh, the Oasins.
Yeah, the Oasins. And you're thinking, well, something's going on here. Like, why do they want him? Why do they want, you know, this book of strange new things? Why him? And I was waiting for a Wicker Man moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
But no, it's lovely. It's just they're a lovely people.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I don't know whether it's a human mind that wants to think that it's going to be something different to that. Do you know what I mean? But I guess you're expecting that, and that's what keeps you on edge. Do you know what I mean? All the bloody time I'm getting into this bit, I'm thinking, right, you know, only a few pages left now. It's going to get to the bit where I'm going to find out that, you know, there's an ulterior motive for this and the whole thing. But yeah. I just thought he's an exceptional writer. How did you come across him?
That's a good question. I think the first one I read was maybe this one. It's quite a few years ago now, maybe sort of 5-6 years ago, and I think I just liked the cover art and the premise of it. But when I started reading it, I was sort of like, oh, I'm not sure about this. The language is sort of really, it's kind of disarming because he uses some kind of almost like some kind of naff sentences, but it's just kind of modern vernacular, and it's quite disarming in the context of sci-fi, or at least what you think is going to be sci-fi. And yeah, I just got really drawn into this book. I mean, I thought it was the best thing I'd ever read, and then I read Crimson Petal after that, and thought, maybe that's objectively, maybe that is better book. I don't like to use words like better because like competitive words like that. I don't know how you measure such a thing, but like technically, Crimson Petal is like astonishing. But Book of Strange New Things is probably the one I feel fondest about, because I think it's just so, there's something in this fantastical situation, there's something just so real about it, and I think really prescient as well. Like, it feels, looking back, and I won't give too much away about the book, but the character is separated from their spouse at home, and by this, so they have this amazing way to travel to other planets, but then the communication system is really clunky. It's like almost like the first wave of computers. It's so funny. Yeah. I think it's a really funny book in a lot of ways, as well as being very sad. But every time he has some broken communication, the situation on Earth back home is spiraling more out of control, with riots and food shortages and all these kind of natural disasters, fires, and
I thought that was an interesting role reversal. Do you know, like when he goes off to the planet and he looks to back home as to be the place, the secure place where he wants to go back to, and then as it progresses, it sort of flips. Do you know what I mean? And the planet is the most the kind of where everyone feels at home and grounded on, where everything's going to chaos. I really like the email exchanges as well. Do you know, like they're done in a different font, which is quite good. Do you know, to kind of make you realise.
I can't remember.
Yeah, they're done in sort of a different font, so you know when he's like typing and when he's not. And
yeah,
it's really good. And I also like, don't know whether you remember this, because if you're not ready, I mean, I find bloody my memory's like a sieve after I've read a book after a month after I've forgotten it. But they have weird. They can't pronounce the letters.
Oh, it's incredible! It's so incredible, this language. And there's an amazing thing. I listened to a few interviews with Michel, and there's one where he reads from the book, and he actually reads the language.
Oh, right, okay.
It's so delightful, because it's kind of, there's an inherent funniness to it, but he's really obviously committed to it as well. I can't remember where the interview's from. It's from some book festival, but it's absolutely brilliant to hear the language spoken, or at least his interpretation.
I need to Google that, because that's one of the things that I thought was absolutely brilliant, that he just gets totally into it. And it's like his descriptions of the faces is like, they didn't have a face, right? They didn't have eyes, they didn't have a mouth, so there's nothing to look at, and as one night I was just thinking, like, how do you do that? Like, how do you address someone when you don't know what the focus is? Do you know what I mean? And then it made me realize about our eyes, I guess, and how important they are, like facial features and stuff. Yeah, I just thought it's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. So
tell me, like, what got you into reading?
I was really keen reader when I was a kid, with like the usual things, Roald Dahl, and then Robin Jarvis, The Death of Mice, and then all the adventure game books like Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. Those more than anything really, beginning with Warlock at Firetop Mountain, and from the Death Trap Dungeon and all this, House of Hell. But I fell out of reading when I was maybe 12 or 13, because I got quite down about my eyesight. I have I'm visually impaired, so I have it's called X-linked retinoschisis, which is so I got really, as well as I guess I was like in denial about it, so stopped wearing glasses and stopped reading, and I don't know, so I was out of it for like up till about 19 or 20, and then a friend, very good friend, but I think they got me a copy of Ben Ockrey, Incidents at the Shrine. This short, very short one, and that just started as reading again. And I was trying to write songs and stuff, but I didn't have any well to draw on. I didn't have enough. I didn't know how to write because I wasn't reading. I mean, it seems so obvious now, but yeah. So getting back into it was like, oh my god, it was so like, I can go to the bookshop and enter another world. Suddenly, it was like, wow, all that missed opportunity and time over the previous 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a similar story that I probably repeat every time I do the book club, but I just got into it was when I started reading more like deviant literature, like Bukowski and stuff like Bret Easton Ellis' American Psycho when I was like 14. And as soon as I started reading books like that, it opened up a whole new world for me. I just realized that, shit, people swear in books, and like they have sex and do drugs and murder people. This is fucking great. I want to read more like this, and then that just opened the door. And then I was like in and then reading all sorts of stuff. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I got into it. But I think it's fine. I think it's normal to not read when you're a teenager, really. I think I hated reading when I was a kid. And when I was an early teen, all the books that were pushed on us to read as kids were just like about rich aristocrats, life going wrong for rich aristocrats, and you're meant to feel sorry for them. And it's like, doesn't really say anything to me about my world. Not to say that like drug dealers and bloody murderers and rapists does, but I identified with the sort of, I don't know, the otherness of that, the kind of underground, the subculture of that sort of literature really grabbed me.
Well, maybe this is a good segue to Michel Faber's Crimson Petal, because that's a Victorian novel. I mean, there is precedent for it, but for it to be so firmly from the point of view of somebody working class, or even maybe a class below that, if you want to call it. It was just really unusual to read, but in such detail.
Yeah.
The intricacies of that person's life. I mean, I know obviously like a lot of Victorian novels do go there, but for it to be so textured and real.
Is there any books that you always recommend to friends?
Well, the last few years, Thomas Pynchon, Against the Day. I think that's the best thing I've ever read.
You actually recommend Pynchon? Like, I warn people. I'm like, you can read this, but I don't say I've recommended it.
I know what you mean, but I guess most people would like Gravity's Rainbow is the famous one, but that really is tough. Like, I've kind of read it, but mainly failed. I think I've kind of covered it, but not in at all satisfactory. It's really horrible and hard. I mean, it's amazing. Against the Day is massive, but it's so good, and just so it's completely changed my perception of how the world works, how kind of Western world works. So yeah, I would recommend that, but with the caveat that you need to not do anything else for 6 months, not read anything else for 6 months, because you're not going to get through it fast. And then apart from that,
is it like Pynchon's other stuff? Like, because I've read 2 of Pynchon's novels, one of them being Gravity's Rainbow, and you sort of hang on for dear life. You're kind of hanging on to sentences, going, "Okay, I understand that. Let's get to the next sentence. I understand that one. Okay, yeah, I know what's going on." And then at some point, you just slide, and you're like, "No, fuck, I've lost it. I don't know what's going on." Is it that?
I mean, it's No, it's dense, but it's different, and it's sprawling, but in a way there's a warmth there which isn't. I don't think I found was present in Gravity's Rainbow, and it's just some of the things that happen are just so amazing. It's like there's kind of elements of it are like wacky comic book just spilling out of the page, and then you'll have a completely terrifying passage where he talks about, for instance, a kind of wind that is almost like a living entity, a wind that blows through Italy that the locals all know of. Oh, this, it's one of those days the wind is present. Some totally, it's like everything in a book. And it isn't, once you get going, it's not hard in the way that Gravity's Rainbow is hard throughout.
That's good. It sounds a bit like David Lynch-esque in that wind thing of that sort of natural spirit being, all pervading there.
Yeah, there's more. I mean, in the same way, like maybe something about David Lynch is like digging under this surface of America. This book is like, there's a lot in it about mining. A lot about mining. So a lot about subterranean worlds, and it's completely amazing. And that there's no book written in its style. It's like it's just like something else. It's not. You couldn't really compare it to other books either. It's just its own thing. So I would recommend that maybe. But I take your point. It's like just practically not. People have jobs, and it would another pandemic we could hope for. Good chance to get some reading done.
Well, the thing is, like for me, and I do enjoy reading. It's just how you define reading, right? Because for some people, reading would be like an enjoyable hobby, which it should be, right? I guess. And at the end of every night, I go to bed and I read for at least half an hour of the book that I'm on. It should be a nice end to the day. Gravity's Rainbow is not that really.
No.
It was hard, but I did cling on. And as I've said before, I had to, in the end, in the final pages, I had to do it like running a race. So I had to do 10 pages every night. And that was like, as long as I did 10 pages every night, I counted them and I was like, I'm going to finish it in 6 weeks if I do 10 pages every night for the next whatever. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's hard.
Well done.
But, books. Should books be an easy read? I don't necessarily think they always should be. I think that's the good thing about different books. Have you ever read any Ken Follett?
No.
Okay, so one of my favourite books, which is a bestseller, massive paperback that you can get in all airports. It's called Pillars of the Earth. It's a trilogy. So the first one's called Pillars of the Earth, and it's about this guy who builds a cathedral. Well, he's a master builder, and he starts building this cathedral in pre-medieval times. And the trilogy is like him, and then obviously you can't build a cathedral in a lifetime, which is a bit of a mad concept in itself, like starting something that you'll never see the end of. But the 3 books go through his life, and then his son, and then his son's son, and they're absolute page turners. They're absolutely brilliant, but they're so easy to read. Do you know what I mean? But it's like that book has sold millions and millions of copies, but it's still as valid, I think, as something like Gravity's Rainbow, which I think there's a lot of sort of academic criticism about, and a lot of people, sort of respecting, Pynchon for the complexity of his work.
Yeah.
On the other hand, Pillars of the Earth is a very easy read, but also great. And sometimes I love that,
Yeah.
Yeah,
the whole. It's definitely good to be not to, how can I say that? Not to trust the canonical norm. You know, like you kind of read some things, you go, wow, I'm not really digging this, but decades of reviewers have said this is good. So it's who might disagree, but I think it's really good to get to a point where you just go like, life's too short. And actually, I feel a bit like that with. No, I don't feel like that about Gravity's Rainbow, but I would respect that. But there's plenty of good books where I just have thought, this is no, there's no need. And like you say, like being a page turner is a great thing. If it's not a page turner, or if it's really difficult to read, then there has to be a good reason for that. It has to inform. It has to be because it's getting across really complex ideas, or else that it's intrinsic to the characters, or it demonstrates something about the story. But yeah, I mean, I'll just ditch books now. I don't have any worries about doing that. I read a great book a couple of weeks ago by John Hilton.
Oh yeah,
Horizon, which is like I think it was like 1930s, 40s, and it's like an adventure novel about getting to Shangri-La.
what's
And
it?
it's Lost Horizon.
Okay.
I think it was a really popular book in the time, and it's probably a bit old-fashioned now. But it was just like fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to be suspicious of the academic in all walks of life, but especially books.
But I do like things. It gives you a different. So, like if you're reading stuff like that, like Pillars of the Earth, or whatever, all the time, these page turners. I mean, to be fair, Crimson Petal and the White was a page turner for me. I thought it was I was just dying every night to get back into that world,
Yeah.
But it had the quality there that I think some page turning books lack. That Crimson Petal had everything. But sometimes it's good. I remember reading The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test, Tom Wolfe, like years and years ago. But I remember going a little bit the same as Pynchon, I'm not really sure what's going on, but I'm hanging on. Weird, I don't really understand it. And at the end of it, like, it was great. It was an experience. It had done something in my brain subliminal that I wasn't quite aware of. So reading a book isn't always about understanding the story. Sometimes, I felt the same about Gravity's Rainbow. I finished it and I kind of thought, what the fuck? Like, what even was that about? And it's hard. And then I started watching all these YouTube critiques on it to try and like get a grip on what it was. And even they were like sliding down this greasy pole, going like, I can't understand it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't have to. And I'm getting philosophical now, but it's a bit like being in the world, like we're always looking for that meaning, aren't we, to grip onto, but there is no meaning. And sometimes, and that you have to make peace with the fact that you don't understand it.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, and maybe we're sort of, this is like a bit off piece, but I was chatting the other week about the film Shawshank Redemption, and it's a mainstream but very good American movie, and they tested it with audiences, and it tested really well, apart from the end where Morgan Freeman's character's going over the hill in the bus, and he says, like, I hope I see my friend again. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it's been in my dreams. I hope. And then the bus dips over the horizon. Hello, girl. Here's trouble. And he's here. All right. And then they tested so badly that end that they tacked on to the finished film them being reunited on the beach.
Right.
And then the credits roll. And I guess it's just like, it was the perfect ending before. Like, why ruin that ambiguity? And it's a little different to the point, but it's like this idea of that we need crisp resolutions or to know what's happened. Come on, do you want to come up here?
Mm-hmm.
Trouble's not been very well this week.
Oh, she's actually called Trouble.
Yeah.
That's a cute name.
We got back. We were away for a couple of nights, so we just set the feeder for her, which we usually. I think we've left her on our own once like that. Usually, our friend looks in on her every day. But when we got back, she was really lethargic and hiding away and not eating and big eyes, just staring, like totally out of it. It was quite scary, but so she was a little better yesterday. We took her to the vets anyway, and then the vet wasn't too worried, but she hadn't had a poo in like 4 days, 4.5 days. But literally, we just had the plops have occurred in the last half an hour from this arsehole right next to my head.
That one?
This one, yeah.
What?
One of these over here. One of these ones. So we're in there. I think we're all clear.
Have you ever come across this guy before? Castle Freeman.
No.
Well, I discovered him quite a few years ago, and he's absolutely brilliant. He's my favourite living author ever.
Okay.
And he's still alive. Well, yeah, as he's a living author, and he's like in his 70s, and he lives in Vermont. And I wrote an email to him, and he answered back, which was like, oh my God, which was great. And he's just so good. Do you read any? Oh God, who's the guy who does Cormac McCarthy?
Yeah.
So he's quite a similar style to Cormac McCarthy.
Okay.
As in that sort of vernacular patter, he gets 100. He gets just bang on. He's brilliant at it, and he's also he writes about the area that he comes from.
Yeah.
In all of his books, which I really like, because he's really got a handle on the local people, and that comes across in the humor. Do you know, like
No.
all his characters are quite humorous. They all have the little quirks, and he gets the pattern, and everything that they say, he gets spot on, and it's just absolutely brilliant. So I would recommend that. This is the next one for the book club.
What about? Did you read The Sea by Iris Murdoch?
No, the Cedar what?
The Sea.
The Sea.
Yeah.
Oh, now that's ringing a bell, but I don't know whether. I don't think I will have read it. Maybe it's just in a bookshop that it's read about. Maybe I've seen it.
It's amazing in that it sort of carries to me something in common with the book of Strange New Things, just in terms of this feel of like cloying claustrophobia and almost like a dullness. It's like a really dull book. It's
really
fantastic.
Really selling. That sounds absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And then,
give me another.
Maybe like, I don't know. There's some things like, like. I don't know if I could settle on just one, like Denis Johnson, Train Dreams. It's just a little, that'll be like that's like the opposite of, it's so slim, so in a way, maybe it balances out. That's like 100 pages, but it's beautiful. Ursula Le Guin, Earthsea books, if you haven't read them. No. They're very page turners.
I think maybe John Duran mentioned that. Either that or I know that. For some reason, I know that book. So that's called what? Sorry.
Well, it's the Earthsea series, and the first book's A Wizard of Earthsea, and then number 2 is The Tombs of Atuan, which is incredible. It's like in the fantasy genre. I was chatting with Chris Joins about this the other night because he's a big fan of Ursula Le Guin, and he was sort of saying what's so great is they're in the fantasy genre, but the fantasy things don't happen. Again, we could tie this to Michel's book of Strange New Things. this kind of idea that you're in this. You sort of expect a number of things to happen, but they just never do, and you expect them to happen because of the genre that you read and the kind of the clothes people are wearing. There might be spells, or in the other case, aliens and spaceships and stuff. So in the Earthsea series, it just tends to be people in rooms talking about politics and kind of interpersonal stuff, and then like the third book is kind of more of an adventure, a bit more straightforward, but dragons and seafaring. But then book number 4 is just loads of farming, looking after chickens, and it's really good. It's so good, and look, just great ideas. Like she doesn't hide what she's trying to say, and the kind of things that she finds disagreeable and agreeable. They're right there in plain sight, but like not too heavy-handed. So they're written for young adults or older kids, I guess. So they're really like quite easy to read, but really massive and unusual. And I mean, yeah, she's great.
Oh, they sound good. Yeah. I might read them with my little lad then. Maybe he's a bit young, but
yeah. She also wrote a lot of more like hard sci-fi. So Left-Handed Darkness is really fascinating. It can be a slog at times, but yeah, she's great. If anyone hasn't read Ursula Le Guin, then that would be a big recommend.
That's great. I love all the recommendations, because I think maybe part of it is quite selfish, this book club thing. I say it's a book club. It is a book club, really, but I just want to get some great recommendations. Do you know what I mean? For what I want to read, because, I feel like sometimes you get to a point where you've read everything, or you're going in circles around the genres that you prefer. Do you know what I mean? I've read that. Yeah. One I did read, as I think I mentioned it to you a while back, The Magus by John Fowles.
Oh, yeah. How did you find it?
I loved it. It's probably one of my favourite ever books, but only discovered in the last 5 years, which is mad. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. And what was really very strange is that I discovered that he wrote another book called The Collector, which I read when I was about 16, 17, and was completely blown away by it, but I didn't know it was the same author. And so going back. So it's I've just bought another one of his the other day, but it's interesting to know that it must be my reaction to his writing that I really love.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Yeah, that was just a mad book, The Magus. I just thought it was unbelievable.
It was one of those that I sort of read and I couldn't stop reading, but I almost didn't enjoy it whilst I was reading it. But every time I put it down, I would feel like, oh God, that's so good. and I guess just because of the situation the character's in is so hideous, or seemingly so hideous, and just...
It's deeply unpleasant, that book.
Yeah.
Which is maybe why I like it. I don't know. Maybe that says something about me. I don't know.
Did you read Michel's Under the Skin?
No. I was going to ask you what other ones have you done? And it is Michel, isn't it? I've just realised now you say that. That's how I've been saying Michael. I've been putting the A in there.
I felt aware of it, but I didn't want to correct or anything like that.
You should have corrected, Richard. I'm going to look like a right tit now, aren't I? So, but have you read any of their others?
Oh yeah, I think most of them I have. Probably bar one, but Under the Skin is fantastic, and I guess I put it off for a while because I'd seen the film adaptation with Scarlett Johansson. I've lost the director's name who did Sexy Beast. Is it Glazer? Jonathan Glazer? And I didn't love the film. The first half an hour is like completely startling in this film, like whoa, and then I sort of it wasn't for me after that. No criticism of it, but it put me off reading the book a little bit because I thought, well, I've seen that, but the book is so different. So I guess it was if people have sort of considered reading it and maybe not because they've watched the film, I would absolutely read it because it's. I mean, yeah, it's quite different to the other books we've discussed of his. It's
Yeah, I'm just having a look. Under the Skin, yeah. That was a Whitbread shortlisted book. So it looks like he's read written Under the Skin, Crimson Petal and the White, The Fire Gospel, and the Fahrenheit Twins. And this one.
Yeah, and there's the Courage Consort as well, is there? I think Fahrenheit Twins is like short stories and
and 2 novellas, The 199 Steps and The Courage Consort. So you reckon that Under the Skin's the next one I should go for?
Definitely.
Great.
It's horrendous, though. I mean, it's really shocking.
I can do shocking.
Yeah, I struggle a bit, but yeah.
Oh, I don't know, actually. It depends what sort of shocking. I can do rude. I can do violent to a point, but I can't do torture.
Well, the thing, I can't really say too much. No, I would recommend that you read it, for sure.
I remember reading Murakami, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicles, and I think it's that book. I don't know whether you've read it, but it's got this scene in it where a guy gets flayed alive. And it's across 2 or 3 pages, a very intense description of them peeling away this guy's flesh and the agony that he was in. And I can't do that. Like, okay. I just can't do it. I can do any other part of, like, you know, out there.
Yeah.
I can do kind of, yeah, like, have you read, that's a brilliant book. John Williams, the Buffalo's Crossing.
Oh, Butcher's Crossing.
Butcher's Crossing, that's it. Butcher's Crossing about buffalo.
That's one of the best books ever,
isn't it? Oh my God! You see, that's why like I need your recommendations because everything you like, I like. It's amazing, and it's very grim though.
It's hideous.
It is hideous. That is a good word for it. But I could do that in a way that I couldn't. Some of the torture and I just can't stand.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. But yeah,
I'm glad you read that. That's a great book.
Oh my God, it's amazing, that one.
I know that you've got to go, but just briefly and without spoiling anything in the book, but the moment where the Oasis sing.
I thought you were going to spoil it. I thought you were going to tell me about Under the Skin and you're going to go at the end of this book.
No, just when they sing Amazing Grace, I think it is. When he zip. I know he said too much. This is just amazing.
We could say spoiler alert, couldn't we?
Oh yeah, spoiler alert. Well, it's too late now. The aliens sing a song. Spoiler alert.
What are you saying about that?
Oh, that's it.
All right, okay.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. You should, yeah. Meow.